Hi guys, today's lesson is an introduction to the periodic table. We're going to look at things like groups and periods and trends that you might find in a periodic table, as well as linking it to last lesson and looking at the structure of an atom and where it's located on the periodic table. Okay, so let's get into the starter questions. Draw the electronic structure for oxygen. Well, if you remember from last lesson, oxygen has 6 electrons. So if we were to draw that and arrange the electrons in the correct way, we'd have the nucleus. We'd have one shell with 2 electrons in, and we'd have the second shell with the remaining 4 electrons in. That gives us a total of 6 electrons for oxygen's 6. Right, define the term isotope. This was also on last lesson, and if you remember, an isotope has the same number of protons. I'm going to do this shorthand. Same number of protons, but a different number of neutrons. And finally, how many protons, electrons and neutrons are there in lithium? Well, lithium has a mass number of 7 and an atomic number of 3. So it has 3 protons, 3 electrons, and for neutrons it would be 7 minus 3. So that equals 4 neutrons. Okie dokie, let's get into today's lesson. When you look at the periodic table, you'll see that all the elements are laid out in a particular way. And in the next video, we're going to look at why that is. But in today's video, I just want to focus on 2 main components. And the first one is that we call vertical columns groups. So any of these vertical columns going down are called groups. The first one I've highlighted in red is called group 1. The next vertical column would be called group 2. We ignore this whole section in the centre for now. And the third group is picked up over here where you see a 3. So group 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and finally you would think this is group 8, but we actually call it group 0. Now that's really important. Whatever periodic table you are given in an exam will have the group numbers written at the top. But if they don't, it's very important that you memorize this so you know what the number groups are. And some groups have particular names. Now we're going to look at this in more detail in the upcoming videos, but we'll have a look at some of them now. Group 1 is called the alkaline metals, Group 2 the alkaline earth metals, and then Group 7 the halogens, and Group 0 the noble gases. So that's kind of another way of telling you what elements are in which group. If I was to say the halogens, I would be talking about group 7 here, and I'd know it contained those elements. Now let's have a look at the electron configuration of an element and how that links to their position on the periodic table. Lithium. Well, we've done lithium before. That was the starter. Lithium has 3 electrons, 2 in the first shell, and then 1 in the second. Sodium has 11 electrons, 2 in the first, 8 in the second, and then 1 in the third. Now I want you to pause this video and just look for any similarities that you might see between these two, between lithium and between sodium, and then unpause for the answers. Right, well hopefully you noticed that both have just 1 electron in their outermost shell. And this is really key because if we go back to our periodic table, we'll see that both these elements, lithium and sodium, are in group 1. And they both have 1 electron in their outermost shell. Well, this is the way it's been designed because all group 1 elements have 1 electron in their outermost shell. All group 2 elements have 2 electrons in their outermost shell. 3 have 3, 4 have 4, and you get the picture. So it's a really quick way of telling how many electrons are in a particular atom's or element's outer shell. So if I was to say to you, how many electrons does chlorine have in its outer shell? If you look on the periodic table for it, you'll see it's in group 7, so it must have 7 electrons in its outer shell. It's a good little tip for finding the electrons in their outer shell quickly. Right, the next thing to look at are the horizontal rows, and we call these periods. Now unlike groups, they don't have particular names. We just call each horizontal row a period. And each period is responsible for telling you how many shells a particular element has. So for example, all the ones in the first row have 1 shell, all the ones in the second row have 2 shells, 3 shells and 4 shells respectively. Now I've written that here. You might want to get the bits down in red for your notes, and it just lets you know that every element in a group has similar properties because they have the same number of electrons in their outer shell, and every element in the period or in the same period have the same number of shells. Finally, if you look at the place of an element on the periodic table, it does tell you a lot about its properties. We know that if an element has the same amount of electrons in its outer shell, it has very similar properties, and it's found in the same group. But if you have a look at these two elements in particular, oxygen and aluminium, I want you to think about their properties. So pause the video, try and come up with some properties, and then unpause for the answers. Right, well, oxygen is found in the air as O2, and it's a gas. Aluminium? Well, aluminium's a solid, and it's a metal. And we use it to make cans. Those two things are unbelievably different. We have oxygen, a gas, and metal, a solid. Well, if we look at the periodic table again, we'll see their position on the periodic table, oxygen there, and aluminium here, tells a lot about its properties. We can see that anything with a metallic property is found on the left-hand side of the periodic table, and anything with a non-metallic property is on the right, and it's indicated by a step line. So just to reiterate, metals are found on the left and non-metals on the right, and they both have distinct properties which we'll look at in later videos. Now I'm going to leave you with 4 questions to have a go at. If you need any help with any, put a comment in the box below. Thanks for watching, see you later.